move to question time, and I call Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, prior to the election, Labor MP Joss Burns promised Jewish Australians' interests would be protected irrespective of who forms government. And Attorney-General, now Mark Dreyfus, claimed on matters to do with Israel that Australia spoke with one voice. Yesterday, though, the Australia-Israel Labor Dialogue co-convener, Adam Sloman, said your unilateral decision to change Australia's long-standing position on Israel and the disputed territories, quote, places Australia as an outsider and not a cooperative supporter for both parties to reach a two-state solution. Meanwhile, the Zionist Federation of Australia and the Executive Council of Australian Jewry jointly described your decision as inaccurate, ahistorical and counterproductive, and that it put a peace agreement further out of reach. Minister, can you cite precisely what motivated your government to make this unilateral change at this time, other than to appease Labor's factions ahead of next week's party conference?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and thank you to Senator Birmingham for the question. And what I'd say to him is, first, what I said yesterday, that we are guided in our approach to the Middle East by the principle of advancing the cause of peace. And we are guided by the principle of progress towards a just and enduring two-state solution. And that's actually my view. And what I outlined yesterday to Senator Fawcett, and I appreciate Senator Fawcett would have different views about some of the issues, is the set of positions that we have ensured the government has in international fora and domestically, which are consistent with that principle. The government was also deeply concerned, and I would hope that all in this place would be, about the alarming trends we have seen in the Middle East in recent times. I would make the point that these trends are significantly reducing the prospects for peace. We are seeing escalating violence, the loss of Israeli and Palestinian lives, civilian lives. In fact, the UN reports that more Israeli and Palestinian civilians has died as a result of violence in the West Bank this year than in any full year over the last decade. NGOs also report, and this is relevant, that more settlement units have been advanced in the first half of this year than in any full year in the last decade. And I would have hoped that Senator Birmingham and the opposition would also share our concerns that have been expressed about changes to the judicial system and changes to the planning regime which would enable further settlements. So I make those points. That is the context and those are the overriding principles of how we approach these issues. Senator Birmingham also said this is inconsistent with long-standing Australian policy. That is simply incorrect. And if you look at policy as articulated by previous governments until most recently, partway through the last government.
Senator Wong. The time for answering has expired. Senator Birmingham, first supplementary.
Thanks, Minister. Minister, you speak using the phrase alarming trends. Do you acknowledge that there have also in recent times been positive trends, such as the normalisation of relations between Israel and many other Middle Eastern nations? How is the decision of your government not going contrary and in the opposite direction to those trends we're seeing with many other Middle Eastern nations?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Wong.
Well, we already have a diplomatic relationship with Israel. We already recognise Israel, and in fact it was an Australian Labor government and an Australian Labor minister who moved the motion that you would recall in terms of the establishment of Israel, if not moved, was spoke to it. But I would make this point about consistency, because consistency is important. And what we will not do is tell one thing to Australians and another thing to the international community, which is what you did. So, on the one hand, you continued to support Security Council resolutions which affirmed, for example, UNSCR 478, Israel's annexation of East Jerusalem constituted a violation of international law. You affirmed UN Security Council Resolution 2334, which went to settlements. But you told voters of Wentworth something else. So if you want to talk about consistency, perhaps look at yourselves.
Has expired. Senator Birmingham, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, now that you've changed Australia's position in relation to Israel, yet again during the life of your government, and done so in order to appease the factions ahead of next week's national conference, can you rule out any further changes to Australia's position, particularly in relation to the recognition of Palestinian statehood, regardless of whatever factional divisions, debates, shenanigans occur at next week's Labor Party conference?
Before I call the minister, I'm going to remind both sides of the chamber to Senator McKenzie. I am addressing the chamber. I've asked for silence while the minister continues her response. Minister Wong.
I think anybody who has observed the way I've approached National Conference on these issues over 5 years would know I am very consistent on these issues, and I will be continuing to assert the same position to all parts of the Labor Party that I have asserted since pre-2018. And I think people know that. Some people don't like that position, some people do, but that's, that is the view I have. But in terms of consistency, I would like to remind you, Senator, that in relation to the phrase occupied territories, in 1981, Fraser's Foreign Minister Tony Street expressed the government's opposition to annexation of occupied territories, including East Jerusalem. The same position was articulated by Foreign Minister Hayden and Prime Minister Keating. Foreign Minister Downer also stated Australia supported UN resolutions on the applicability of the Geneva Convention to the occupied territories, and it goes on. We are consistent and we are principled on this issue and on all issues.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Polley.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister of Health, Senator Gallagher. With the community pharmacy agreements playing a crucial role in ensuring Australians have access to safe, affordable and life-saving medicines, can the Minister detail the government's intentions regarding the negotiations of the new community pharmacy agreement? How does the government plan to build on the legacy of the PBS, introduced 75 years ago by the Curtin Labor government, to continue providing affordable medicines? What are the specific strategies to enhance the role of community pharmacies in our health system?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, President. I thank Senator Polley for her question and for all her work over many years on the Community Affairs Committee and other committees that have looked at issues around affordability and accessibility of healthcare and medicines for Australians. The PBS is one of the most important pillars of our health system. This has been recognised by Labor government stretching right back, including those who introduced Australia's first scheme designed to ensure that Australians with access would be given access to affordable medicines. Labor remains committed to providing Australians with access to affordable medicines, and community pharmacies, as Senator Polley said in her question, play a vital role in our health system. This includes ensuring pharmacies can work to the fullest extent of their skills and training to build the strength of the sector. We want more Australians to benefit from the experience and the care that's provided by community pharmacists in more ways than they already do. And for the past 30 years, since they were introduced by the Hawke government, a series of community pharmacy agreements have outlined the way in which the government reimburses community pharmacy for dispensing subsidised medicines on the PBS, providing medication management programs and services. And as the government strengthens Medicare and reforms primary care, there is a renewed focus on how every health worker, including pharmacists, can contribute to the health of Australians. The Minister for Health has announced that the government will soon begin negotiations for an 8th community pharmacy agreement, and this agreement will support the government's ongoing commitment to improving patient health outcomes and providing cheaper medicines for all Australians. As I said yesterday, the dispensing 60-day dispensing is an important cost of living measure that will ease the burden on household budgets by some $180 per medicine per year. This is an important cost of living measure, and the Senate should support it.
Thank you, Minister Gallagher. Senator Polley, first supplementary.
Through you, President. Minister, in the recent budget, the government committed to introducing 60-day prescriptions. How is the government planning to reinvest the savings from this initiative back into community pharmacy sector? Could the minister elaborate on the measures already in effect and those on the way to strengthening the role of pharmacists in our healthcare?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. And yes, I can, Senator Polley. Every single dollar that the government saves with the 60-day prescriptions will be reinvested straight back into community pharmacy sector, so pharmacists play an even more central role in the healthcare of Australians. Some of the reinvestment measures have already taken effect, like the doubling of the budget for the regional pharmacy maintenance allowance and the changes to opioid dependency treatment for tens of thousands of Australians who can now buy their PBS-approved pharmacy at PBS prices. Others are on the way, like expanding the scope of pharmacists into residential aged care to work on site in a clinical role, improving medication management and safety. And on January the 1st, we'll further expand the national immunisation program to pharmacists and have pharmacists finally paid the same rate that a doctor gets to administer the vaccine. We've also delivered a major increase in government payments to every single pharmacy around the country, which are now paid 7% more for services like dispensing, handling, administration and infrastructure.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Polley, second supplementary.
Through you, President, could the Minister further explain how the government is fulfilling its commitment to reinvesting savings from the move to a 60-day prescriptions? Specifically, what support is being provided to rural and regional pharmacies as part of the reinvestment package, and how will these investments ensure the ongoing strength and vitality of the pharmacies in our largest rural towns and remote communities?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I acknowledge the work of our Tasmanian senators who have been making representations to the government about issues that have been raised with them as this reform is being progressed. But as part of the reinvestment package, the government is doubling the total budget for the regional pharmacy maintenance allowance. There are currently over 1,000 pharmacies in regional, rural and remote Australia that access this allowance, and current data shows that more than 87% of all pharmacies in regional, rural and remote Australia access the allowance. Under the increase, Australia's most rural pharmacies may be eligible for almost $100,000 in government assistance. And from September 1 this year, the government is introducing the Regional Pharmacy Transition Allowance to support pharmacies in the transition to 60-day scripts. This will provide $148.2 million over 4 years for eligible pharmacies in regional, rural and remote Australia.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson.
President, my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, the government is facing a rank-and-file party revolt over AUKUS ahead of next week's Labor National Conference.
Order. Order. Senator Patterson. Senator Patterson. Senator Patterson, please resume your seat. Order on my right. Order on my right. Order. Senator Pratt, I've just called the chamber to order and you continued. Senator Patterson, I think the first part of your question was well and truly heard. If you continue on, please.
I wouldn't want anyone to miss it, Madam President, so I'll just repeat it. Minister, the government is facing a rank-and-file party revolt over AUKUS ahead of Labor's National Conference, with media reporting more than 40 Labor branches all calling for a review. Is this division...
Senators on my right. Please continue, Senator Patterson.
Is this division within the Labor Party the reason for the Albanese government's billions of dollars in cuts to the defence budget, which is being forced to absorb more of Australia's commitment to Ukraine, reallocate defence funds to DFAT, and is still expected to find additional, as yet unidentified savings from within the remaining defence budget?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Before I call the Minister, I'm going to ask for silence. Minister Wong.
Finance numbers. Well, the answer to that is no, although it was a multi-pronged question. So I think no generally, but certainly to the first point. And we are a party that has our debate in public, and I'm sure it's of great interest to you because yours is not. I'm sure it's got great interest to the Greens because they like secret conferences too. But we are a broad-based party that has our debates in public, and we're prepared to have the debates in public. And what you will see at that conference is the leadership of the Australian Labor Party articulating very clearly why AUKUS is important for our nation's security. And I have spoken about it at length, including at the National Press Club, which you may not have read, Senator Patterson, but you may wish to, and I've also responded publicly and very, I think, clearly to criticisms from various sources about AUKUS. We have articulated the strategic circumstances which have rendered the government's approach necessary. We have articulated the benefit of the technology sharing of the AUKUS partnership, and we are committed to ensure that we deliver continued progress on AUKUS, as was demonstrated at the recent AUSMEN meetings. In terms of the various other aspects of his question, I would make this point that Sir Angus Houston and Mr Smith, who wrote the DSR, did talk about the importance of DFAT contributing to assuring the peace through the work that DFAT does diplomatically, and that is about making sure we use all levers of national power, strategic deterrence, military deterrence, but also diplomacy in pursuit of a peaceful, stable and prosperous region. And that is a good thing.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Patterson, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. And the Foreign Minister will be interested to know I did, of course, read her National Press Club address. Prior to the election, the Prime Minister stated national security is above politics and that this would be a government that delivers on its commitments and brings the country together as a key element of ensuring a stronger and safer Australia. With over 40 Labor branches openly revolting against the AUKUS agreement, isn't it clear that the Prime Minister is failing even to bring his own party together to support Australia's most significant national security commitment since the ANZUS Treaty?
Great question. Minister Wong.
Thank you. First, if I can, I ask for a reminder of relevant funding in relation to defence and DFAT. I'd make the point in 23-24 total DFAT resourcing is $7.8 billion. The total defence resourcing in 23-24 is $55 billion. So I think the Senator's question ought to be taken in the context of those figures. Yes, we do believe national security should be above politics. We don't believe that in pursuit of an election victory, a government should try and scare Australians about the drums of war. We don't believe, in pursuit of an election victory, a government should try and smear a senior member of the opposition as the Manchurian candidate. We don't believe in making unilateral decisions which are contrary to the position Australia has held for decades because a government wishes to win a by-election. So you're right. If you want to be part of making sure national security is above politics, I'm happy to have a discussion. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Patterson, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Media are reporting that the Prime Minister is attempting to shut down debate on AUKUS at the National Conference to avoid embarrassment to the government.
Order.
Are they making it up?
If the Prime Minister cannot trust his own party to be unified in support of AUKUS, how can Australians and our partners trust the Prime Minister to reverse defence cuts and deliver on his commitment to AUKUS?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Before I call the Minister, I would ask those on my right, particularly, to Senator Green, to refrain from interjecting and pointing. Minister Wong.
I think you can see the leadership that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet are articulating on these issues, and I do accept these are different times, and I understand why it is important for us to have that discussion with the community, including inside our own party and beyond, and we have been. We understand that we are asking the country for a multi-decade commitment when it comes to not only the AUKUS partnership in general terms, but the submarines. I mean, that is a multi-decadal commitment which has to be bipartisan, in fact, has to be multi-party. And I am happy to spend the time I do spend alongside the Deputy Prime Minister in party forums and more broadly, articulating the strategic rationale for AUKUS and for the submarines, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you, Minister. Before I go to Senator Faruqi, I will draw to the attention of honourable senators the presence in the gallery of the Australian Political Exchange Council's 8th delegation from the Republic of Korea, led by Dr. Yong Lee. On behalf of all senators, I wish you a warm welcome to Australia and in particular to the Senate. Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, President. My question is to Minister Watt, representing the Education Minister. Minister, today Universities Australia said that we need more people going to university to meet future skills needs. But uni is becoming a pipe dream. Expensive degrees and ballooning student debt has made university increasingly out of reach for young people who don't deserve to be saddled with a death sentence simply for pursuing education. People are already being locked out of the housing market, denied personal loans, and rethinking dreams of further study because soaring student debt is getting worse and worse. Under just 2 years of the Labor government, student debt could rise by a massive 15%. Minister, will your government wipe student debt and make university free so that people can go to uni without being crushed by student debt?
Senator Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Faruqi, for the question. I'm very happy to take a question about access to higher education because of course, the Labor Party is the party of access to higher education. Under Labor governments, going back to the Hawke-Keating days, university and higher education participation in this country has gone up significantly under Labor governments, without the addition of crippling fees like we saw under coalition governments. So I'm always happy to take questions about access to higher education. Now, we understand that, that many students do face significant issues in relation to the debt that they incur, particularly as a result of changes that were made under the coalition government to university funding arrangements. I know Senator Henderson and her colleagues supported increasing fees to very high levels when they were in government, and the Labor government is taking this very seriously. It is important to remember that help loans, which are particularly the subject of the question that Senator Faruqi has asked, are not required to be repaid until a person reaches the income payment threshold. And of course, help repayments are a set percentage based on your income. They don't go up unless someone's salary does go up. But we do recognise that this is an issue facing many young people in the community, and that's why the issue of affordability is one that will be looked at as part of the government's Australian Universities Accord. When HECS was introduced in 1989, 7.9% of Australian adults had a university degree. Now it's almost 33%. So that is the legacy of past Labor governments in making higher education much more accessible, whether it be in the cities or even in the regions, an area that I would have thought that some coalition senators might be a bit concerned about, providing access to higher education in regional areas. So Labor will also always support higher education accessibility.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Faruqi, first supplementary.
Minister, the Coalition's Job-Ready Graduate Scheme was an indefensible, unmitigated policy disaster. Universities Australia said this today, and Labor's own Accord process has said that too. A generation of students, especially female students, are being saddled with exorbitant debt because of this Job-Ready Graduate Scheme. Minister, Labor has been in government now for 14 months. Why haven't you dumped this awful, punitive fee hike?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. And in fact, Minister Farrell reminds me it's been 15 months that we've had the Albanese Labor government delivering to Australians, whether they be young Australians, middle-aged Australians or senior Australians. And what I can tell all students out there who might be watching this or listening to the proceedings is that the only way that anything will change around affordability and accessibility to university is under a Labor government. It certainly won't happen under a coalition government who wants to make fees higher and limit participation in higher education, and it certainly won't happen under a Greens government because, of course, that is a notion that will never actually exist. So it is only a result of Labor governments that we will see the issues of accessibility and affordability of higher education tackled, and that is something that we are already on the job of. Senator Waters asks when. I can tell you it's a hell of a lot earlier than it had ever happened under the Greens, because you will never have the opportunity to do anything about this or any other issue.
Minister, the time for answering has expired. Senator Senator Faruqi, second supplementary.
The 2021 National Student Safety Survey, which was conducted during the COVID lockdowns, found that a staggering 275 students are assaulted on campuses each week. We need to know the true extent of this rape epidemic now that the students are back on campus. Universities Australia have not committed to another survey, which is unacceptable. Will the government ensure another student safety survey is conducted to capture the reality of sexual violence on campuses?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Faruqi. And I share Senator Faruqi's concern about the quite disturbing rates of sexual violence that we continue to see on Australian university campuses. And of course, it's obvious that any student on a university campus, just as anyone in the community, should have a right to feel safe when they're undertaking their education or any other activity. Now, the Minister for Education, Mr Clare, released the Universities Accord interim report a couple of weeks ago. The interim report makes 5 recommendations on these matters, and one of those recommendations is the need to improve—
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Faruqi.
President, I had a very direct question, so my point of order is to relevance. I just want to know, will the government ensure another student safety survey is conducted?
And you did talk about the survey, so the minister has gone to that part of your question, and I will remind him. Senator Waters, your interjections are disorderly. I am responding to a point of order. I'll remind the minister of the second part of your question, Senator Faruqi, but he is being relevant. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President. And Senator Faruqi, I am aware that the 2021 survey found that 1 in 20 students had been sexually assaulted since starting university, an unacceptable figure. And the minister has asked the Department of Education to nominate an expert on prevention and response to sexual harassment and sexual violence to be part of a working group that will provide advice to education ministers on university governance, and I'm sure that matters of the survey will be considered.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator Hanson. Oh, beg your pardon. I'm sorry, Senator Hanson. No wonder you looked at me rather strangely. Senator Marielle Smith.
My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Given that later this year Australians will have the opportunity to vote yes to a voice, which will finally recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our Constitution and pay respect to 65,000 years of culture and tradition, and will help us listen to advice from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, can the Minister explain to the Senate how constitutional recognition through a voice will make a practical difference and improve the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples?
Senator Wong.
Thank you to Senator Smith, and she's an outstanding advocate on these issues in South Australia and more broadly for her state. And a question goes to the heart of what the voice is about, recognising Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our Constitution and respecting 65,000 years of culture and tradition. It's about listening to advice from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people about matters that affect their lives so governments can make better decisions, and making practical progress in Indigenous health, education, employment and housing so people can have a better life. That's what the voice is about. We all know governments have spent billions trying to deal with these issues. Many of us have been in this chamber for many years and have made contributions on the Closing the Gap statements. And the extent of the task before the nation is clear. We have not achieved the results we all want. The gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians is not closing. We know there are enormous challenges facing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, a life expectancy 8 years shorter than non-Indigenous Australians, worse rates of suicide, worse rates of disease, worse rates of infant mortality, fewer opportunities for education and training. The current approach is broken, and the voice is our best chance to fix that. Voting no means nothing will change, and it means accepting we can't do better. But I don't think Australians accept that. I don't think Australians accept that, which is why those opposite keep trying to change the conversation. They keep trying to change the conversation from what the voice will do to other matters. The fact is, the voice is a vehicle to deliver real improvements for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in health, life expectancy, education, employment and housing. What we know is when governments listen to people, about issues that affect them. They make better decisions, they get better results, and they get better value for money.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Marielle Smith, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for that response. While we know that the concept for the voice didn't come from politicians, although the parliament would certainly benefit from its wisdom and advice, can the minister remind the Senate how the voice was conceived and driven by Indigenous Australian communities seeking improvements in the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that will benefit all Australians?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister.
Thank you, President. Senator Smith is right. The call for constitutional recognition through a voice didn't come from politicians. Indigenous Australians asked us to help make a practical change and to create a better future for all Australians. And in 2017, after many years of work and countless conversations in every part of the country, nearly 250 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders and elders called for a voice, an invitation to help make a practical change to their lives and to create better opportunities for future generations. And it is backed by over 80%, 8 out of 10, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Auntie Pat Anderson, a respected Indigenous advocate and elder, says this about the voice. When you involve people, you make better decisions, and the money you spend goes to where it is needed most, to the people on the ground. And that is what a yes vote will do, to give people a say on issues that affect them and make a practical difference that improves lives.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Smith, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for going to the practical benefits of the voice. But perhaps you can also outline to the Senate, remind us all here, why it is that things need to change.
Minister Wong.
Well, as I said earlier, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, Indigenous Australians, face worse life expectancy, worse results in education and employment, worse outcomes in health, and so much more. Regrettably, there are too many in this debate who are prepared to look to their own political interest rather than the interests of the nation. I'll remind the Senate that of what I spoke about yesterday, which is Mr Koori being told by a colleague, maybe one of those opposite, or certainly a colleague of those opposite, we can't win the election unless we defeat the voice solidly, i.e. we need to defeat it to get to the election starting line. I mean, I know those opposite might not like that, but I think what it demonstrates is, yet again, their habit of putting politics over people. Politics over people. That is the approach we remember from the Morrison-Dutton government, and we see that now.
Thank you, Minister. Order on my left. Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. I refer to a speech by Uluru Statement co-author and Referendum Council member Megan Davis when she delivered the Henry Parkes oration in 2018. The Uluru Statement from the Heart isn't just the first one-page statement, it's actually a very lengthy document. And the Prime Minister's statement in the other place yesterday, in which he said leaders at Uluru had come with a statement that fits on an A4 page. When is the Prime Minister going to be truthful with the Australian people and admit the Uluru Statement is much longer than he claimed yesterday?
Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, to Senator Hanson, I'd make a few points. First, Ms Davis has made a statement. There's been a lot of news this week that the Uluru Statement is 26 pages long, but it's one page. That's the statement. That is what we issued to the Australian people. Two, I can show you the Uluru Statement here. I can show you the Uluru Statement here.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Order. Senator Canavan. Order. The minister needs to be heard in silence. Minister Wong.
And it is, I think, a great sadness to many people to see the alternative government denigrating the statement that has been given by First Nations peoples to the people of Australia. But, Senator Hanson, this is the Uluru Statement, and it does fit on an A4 page. And I disagree with your position on this. I appreciate we have a different view, but I think we should at least ensure that we are clear about why we have a different view. With respect, you and others don't have a different view because of the length of the statement. You have a different view because fundamentally you don't think that we should have a voice. We disagree. We disagree. And in fact, I think many of those opposite disagree. There are those opposite who do support a voice, then there are those opposite, including in this chamber, Senator, who support a legislated voice and have so publicly, and I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that. There appear to be those on your side who don't even support that. So the difference between the people, those in this chamber, is there are some who don't support any voice. As I said, Senator Hanson, I disagree with you, but that's your right. There are some who support a legislated voice but are going all out to stop a constitutional voice. That's actually what we're doing. And there are those of us who think that actually, after given all that has happened in this country and the extent of Indigenous disadvantage, that ensuring that our First Nations peoples are recognised in our constitution and are able to have a constitutional right to a voice to give advice. That's all. They are not seeking. The voice does not call for the determination of policy.
The time for answering has expired. Order, Senator Thorpe. Order. Order. Senator Hughes. Order. Senator Watt. Senator Watt.
Made a highly objectionable remark across the chamber, and I'd ask her to withdraw.
I wasn't aware of the remark. I will invite Senator Hughes, if she believes she has been unparliamentary, to invite her to withdraw her statement. I'm moving now to Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Thank you very much. Senator Wong, I think you've been given a lot of misinformation and disinformation. Actually, I have got the Uluru Statement in full here, 26 pages, document 14, that was acquired under the FOI documents. I also have the final report of the Referendum Council here that states the Uluru Statement is in it. That's for you to view. And also I have here Professor Megan Davis's comments here in her statement as well. Now, Professor Davis claimed she had been referring to the Referendum Council report published in 2017 on page 16 of this report.
Senator Hanson. Thank you. It's time, so please resume your seat. I will remind all senators, when senators are asking questions, Senator Whish-Wilson and Senator Thorpe, they have the right to be heard in silence. Minister Wong.
President, well, I think perhaps the best articulation of a response is from Mr Kenny, Chris Kenny. I dared to say what senior coalition MPs had told me to my face, and that is defeating the Voice referendum was their way to help Albanese and turn their fortunes around. I focus on the furphies being put around by the No case. One of them is this claim that the Uluru Statement from the Heart is 26 pages long. This is unsimple.
Minister Wong. Senator Hanson, I acknowledge you're on your feet. I haven't called you yet. Senator Thorpe and Senator Whish-Wilson, I'm aware of those interjections. They are to cease. Senator Hanson.
Thank you, Madam President, because I can't concentrate on the answer here when I have a debate going here in the back.
As you've just heard, Senator Hanson, I've well and truly called them to order. Minister
you.
Wong, please continue.
Again, if she wishes. I'm happy to start again if the senator wishes, but I was referring to Chris Kenny's response to this. He said, and he refers to the furphies, including that the Uluru Statement is 26 pages long, and he says this is simply untrue. They are not the Uluru Statement. They are not part of the Uluru Statement. The Referendum Council 6 years ago took these background papers and published them in a report. They published background material to the Uluru Statement from the Heart. In fact, the paragraph introducing these pages, they call it a synthesis of records of meetings of the dialogues. This synthesis is called Our Story, which happens to be the heading of the first page after the one-page Uluru Statement. But I think really being distracted into this discussion, there is a clear invitation. It's up to people whether or not they wish.
Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
The shaded sections of the report are identical to documents released by the government's very own National Indigenous Australians Agency following a Freedom of Information request. In a clarifying statement to the person who made the request, the agency confirmed that 26 pages of the documents released represented the full Uluru Statement from the Heart. Why are you and the Prime Minister lying to the Australian people about the full Uluru Statement?
Senator Hanson, please order. Senator, I would ask you to Senator Hanson, I would ask you to withdraw that and reframe the comment, the assertion you made around Senator Wong and the Prime Minister.
I will withdraw that.
Thank
Why
you.
are you and the Prime Minister giving the people...
It's time, Senator. Senator Wong has... Senator Hanson, it's not your role to argue back at me, but please finish your question. Please finish your question, Senator Hanson.
OK, so I'll refrain from saying that word.
Thank you.
And I would say, why are you and the Prime Minister giving people misinformation and disinformation with regards to the full Uluru Statement? What are you hiding?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
There is a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and it is not coming from the government. And I refer you to the letter from the NIAA, which says this to the Senator to Senator Price, Nampijinpa Price. I'm writing to respond to your recent statements regarding the Uluru Statement from the Heart. The Uluru Statement from the Heart is one page, signed by the delegates of the National Convention in 2017. The authors of the Uluru Statement from the Heart have confirmed this.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Thorpe, that was disorderly, incredibly disorderly. I would ask you to refrain from interjecting. Minister Wong, please continue.
The additional pages contained in document 14 of the FOI 2223/016, are background and excerpts drawn from regional dialogues. I think that makes it clear, and subject to the usual tabling, I would seek leave to table this. I table the statement or the letter.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cash.
My question is also to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong, following on, in fact, from Senator Hanson's question. Minister, yesterday in question time, the Prime Minister said
Senator Cash, please resume your seat. I appreciate these are difficult questions and difficult answers, and I want senators to be respectful to the person asking the question and to the person answering the question. That means no interjections and no calling out. Senator Cash, I invite you to start again. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I said, my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, yesterday in question time, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "That is the Uluru Statement from the Heart on an A4 bit of paper. That is it." He then held up a single sheet of paper and called any suggestion that the Uluru Statement was a longer document, and I quote, "conspiracy theory and nonsense." But in 2018, at the Henry Parkes oration, Professor Megan Davis said this, and I quote, "The Uluru Statement from the Heart isn't just the first one-page statement. It's actually a very lengthy document of about 18 to 20 pages, and a very powerful part of this document reflects what happened in the dialogues." Does the government consider Professor Davis to be a conspiracy theorist? And if not, will the Prime Minister apologise for misleading the parliament and correct the record?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
I believe this is the same question in substance to the question from Senator Hanson, and I would refer the senator to my answer to Senator Hanson.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cash, first supplementary.
Minister, how many pages are in the Uluru Statement from the Heart?
Just a moment, Minister. Senator Watt, I have called the chamber to order. I have asked senators not to interject. That includes you. Minister Wong.
One.
Senator Cash, second supplementary.
Well, I would seek leave to actually table the full Uluru Statement from the Heart to actually ensure that the Australian Senate knows what is in it.
Sorry, Senator Cash, were you seeking leave?
I was seeking leave to table the full Uluru Statement from the Heart.
Is leave granted?
Subject to the usual courtesies, we will look at first. I would say it is incorrect to call it that. That is the FOI document, which is already public, and I've responded to this already.
Order across the chamber. Senator Cash, subject to the usual courtesies, which is, I think, distribution to the whips.
Has been circulated by the whips prior to question time.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Cash. I thought we'd done that. A second supplementary.
Much, and all Australians will actually see what and how many pages the full Uluru Statement of the Heart is. And, Minister, I say this to you. If we can't even trust you to tell the Australian people how many pages are actually in the full Uluru Statement of the Heart, how can Australians have any faith in what you tell them about the Voice?
Order. Minister Wong.
I again refer to my answer to Senator Hanson, and I would again say to all in here that I think Mr Kenny had it right. Senior coalition members had told me to my face defeating the Voice referendum was their way to help Albanese and turn their fortunes around. Yep. I really focus on the furphies being put around by the no case. One of them is this claim the Uluru Statement is from the Heart is 26 pages long. This is simply untrue. This is simply untrue. And it says something that I think a shadow minister who supports a legislated voice, and if she doesn't, I'd invite her to stand up and indicate that. A senator who supports a legislated voice is focusing on this furphy in order to oppose a constitutional voice. I mean, one can ask why. It comes back to politics.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. I'm not going to call Senator Thorpe until there's silence. Senator Thorpe.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for the Environment and Water, Minister Wong. You have previously stated that it is undertaking thorough consultation on First Nations heritage reforms with First Nations communities and organisations which will determine the timeline of these reforms. Yet your own records show that you have not consulted with the First Nations Heritage Alliance since the end of last year and other First Nations stakeholders since February. My question is, how are you undertaking extensive and thorough consultation when you are not actually consulting at all?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. So, Senator Thorpe, I assume the you in that is the minister I'm representing or the government. But obviously, no, I don't have responsibility for the cultural heritage reforms, but I think your question is clear. The information I have, and I might have given you this answer previously, is that we committed to reforming national heritage protection laws. We committed to consultation with all parties, including the First Nations Heritage Protection Alliance. In relation to details about meetings, the senators put something to me. I don't have any information on that. But I would make the point, and obviously there have been questions, quite a few questions about this last week from the opposition, which obviously came from a different perspective. But I would make the point that this was a process that was actually begun by the opposition when in government. And in fact, the Deputy Leader, the now Deputy Leader of the opposition, Ms Lee, was the minister that commissioned the paper and contracted the First Nations Heritage Alliance to provide advice on the options canvassed in the paper.
Senator Thorpe, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Are we waiting for the EPBC reforms to be completed before you'll actually touch the heritage protection reforms, or the minister that you're representing?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Is Senator Wong's microphone on?
It's all right, I don't mind speaking in silence, actually. My recollection is the EPBC reforms were further down the path in terms of the consultation and policy process, Senator, but that is only a recollection, and I'll certainly get you some further information about that. We went to the election with a commitment in relation to EPBC. The process that I've outlined was a consultation process that Ms Lee started, so they are separate processes, and obviously we had an election commitment in relation to the EPBC Act, which I've no doubt Ms Plibersek is ensuring that she is working on. But in terms of how the government would envisage those two reform processes or consultation processes interacting, let me ask if Ms Plibersek's office can provide you with any further information.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Thorpe, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for that response. Thank you, President. 181 countries have signed on to the UN Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage. When will Australia sign the convention?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister.
I think we all understand, and particularly as I travel around the world, it's clear to me that the multilateral system to protect the environment, to protect heritage, is becoming even more required. I will get some advice from the minister, the relevant minister, about Australia's approach to that convention. We do think that the multilateral system is a very important part of maintaining rules and norms and, frankly, procedures or processes for settling disputes. And we are active in many international fora, and there are many international conventions and arrangements that Australia is party to, and under this government we are putting substantial resources or significant resources into the multilateral system because we think it is of import. On the specific issue of the convention you raised, Senator, I don't have any information
Thank you,
on
Minister.
that.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Pratt.
My question is to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, Senator Watt. Late last week we heard the good news of China lifting its trade barriers in relation to barley. However, I note several news articles in recent days suggesting that a number of barley exporters remain locked out from the Chinese market. Can the Minister please provide an update on the status of these exporters?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thank you, Senator Watt. And you're right, Senator Sterle, another question on agriculture from the Labor Party, the only party that asks questions or shows an interest in agriculture in this chamber. Well, today, President, I have good news for Aussie farmers, especially in Western Australia, Victoria and South Australia. The Albanese government is committed to ensuring Australian farmers, processors and exporters have the best possible access to international markets. And Senator Pratt, as you alluded to, there have been positive developments in recent weeks in stabilising our relationship with China, and that has seen the removal of trade impediments in horticulture, cotton, timber and, of course, last week's removal of tariffs from Australian barley. The Albanese government's calm persistence and sensible dialogue has expedited an outcome for Australian barley producers with the removal of tariff barriers. I have seen that reporting that you referred to, Senator Pratt, about some key grains exporters still not having access to the Chinese market, so it gives me great pleasure today to provide the Senate with an update. Earlier today, the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry received formal notification from the Chinese Customs Agency that CBH Grain and Emerald Grain Australia would be reinstated as registered exporters of barley to China. This, as I say, is great news for Australian farmers and the whole grain supply chain. The Albanese government certainly welcomes this decision. The removal of the suspensions for these two exporters was the result of ongoing technical discussions between our two countries and follows last week's decision to remove the duties applied to Australian barley. I caught up with representatives from CBH, as I know many people did last night at the Showcase WA function here in Parliament, and I know that Rob Dickey and Brianna Peake from CBH join us here in the gallery this afternoon. There are good days and bad days for Australian agriculture, and today is a good day. Both companies will be able to recommence trade with their Chinese customers from today. I'd like to acknowledge the advocacy of Senators Wong and Farrell over a long time, as well as the many officials in industry who've helped along.
Has expired. Senator Pratt, first supplementary.
President, thank you to the Minister for that good news. Given this good news, what will the benefit be for barley farmers and exporters, particularly in my home state of Western Australia?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister.
President, well, we know that the Liberals and Nationals are laughing on the inside and happy on the inside. They can't express their real happiness about good news for Australian agriculture, so they've got to bottle it up inside and feel a little bit cheerful. They're having a little chuckle to themselves about how good it is to have a Labor government back in charge running agriculture policy in this country. Across Australia, 1 in 4 jobs relies on trade, so
Order.
access to international markets is essential for the profitability of Australia's export focus.
Senator Watt. Senator McKenzie. Silence, thank you. Minister Watt, please continue.
Prior to the imposition of the anti-dumping and countervailing duties, China was Australia's largest barley export market at nearly $1 billion per year. But of course, since the imposition of tariffs in 2020, which of course occurred under a coalition government, trade in barley with China has effectively ceased. Australian barley is known in China for being high quality and competitively priced, and the removal of duties allows for the re-establishment of these mutually beneficial, long-held relationships between the Australian barley industry and Chinese users.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator Pratt.
President, clearly the Albanese government is working hard to support farmers, processors and exporters gain a wider market to grow their market share around the world. While these developments on barley are great, I note there are still some industries which face trade impediments with China. What are we doing in the Albanese government to assist in these matters?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Watt.
Thank you again, Senator Pratt, for your interest in these issues. And while these developments on barley are certainly very positive signs, there is more work to be done to remove the trade barriers that were imposed a couple of years ago by China on Australian wine, beef and lobster. I know this is an issue that Ministers Wong and Farrell have repeatedly raised with their Chinese counterparts, as did I when I met with the Chinese agriculture in Rome a few weeks ago. Our government truly believes it is in both countries' interest to see these impediments removed, just as we have seen with barley. In all of the discussions between our government and our counterparts in China, we've always made clear that we see wine and these other impediments as just as urgent as barley. Our position has always been that we'd much prefer to see these matters resolved through dialogue and negotiation rather than having to undertake WTO cases. That's the approach that's worked in relation to barley, and we're very hopeful it will come to a similar arrangement in relation to wine. The Albanese government is stabilising our relationship with our major trading partner, and that is great news for Aussie farmers.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Senator McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam President. I know. Agriculture.
Order.
My question is to the Minister for Trade and Tourism, Senator Farrell. Australian consumers are paying high prices for airfares and would benefit from increased competition. The Transport Minister has rejected Qatar Airways' request for an additional 21 international flights a week. Minister, given the impact additional international carrier competition can have in lowering airfares for Australian passengers, increasing tourism to Australia and delivering lower freight costs, what advice did you provide to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government regarding the Qatar Airways decision? And what discussions or meetings did you, Minister King or the Prime Minister have with our domestic airlines prior to the government making this decision?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Minister Farrell.
President, and thank you, Senator McKenzie, for her question. Well, I'm pleased to say that bit by bit we are turning the situation round from the situation we inherited from the former government, where the level of seats on aeroplanes coming to Australia was very low and the cost was very high. Now we haven't entirely dealt with or resolved that issue in the time that we've been in government, but bit by bit we are working towards a situation where we return the situation to what it was pre the pandemic. Now, there are some countries where we are, in fact, getting more people into Australia than.
Oh, sorry, Senator McKenzie. Senator McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam President. The Minister has yet to go anywhere near the Qatar Airways decision, and indeed the advice he gave to the responsible minister in his capacity as Trade and Tourism.
Thank you, Senator McKenzie, and I will draw the minister's attention to your question. Minister.
Thank you, President, and thanks, Senator McKenzie, for her point of order. The Australian government considers, of course, a range of factors when determining whether an expansion of bilateral air rights is in the national interest. The government at this time has decided not to approve the Qatar Civil Aviation Authority request for additional services. International aviation helps facilitate Australia's tourism, trade and international education sectors and supports our global, national and regional economic interests and social connectivity. We have seen continued growth in Australian domestic aviation in the last year as the sector recovers from the COVID-19.
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Birmingham.
President, point of order on the question of direct relevance. The minister has been broadly relevant to the question asked by Senator McKenzie, but the question went specifically to the advice, the reasons, the minister's own engagement in relation to the decision. He has not touched on any of those areas of direct relevance to the question asked by Senator McKenzie.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. I will draw the minister's attention to the latter part of Senator McKenzie's question. Minister.
Thank you, President. And we've seen a strong recovery in international passenger traffic to and from Australia, which was at 21.351 million.
Minister Farrell, please. Oh, it's time. I'll invite you to your first supplementary, Senator McKenzie.
It's reported the increased flights could have added around 7,000 additional seats per week to Australia, which is great for tourism, your own portfolio if you need a reminder, while extra freight capacity is also great for our exporters and farmers. However, the responsible minister has failed to provide justification for the decision. Minister, what is the real reason your government has rejected the Qatar Airways request and so denied the additional capacity to our trade, tourism and hospitality sectors?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Well, Senator McKenzie, I know exactly what my portfolios are. And I've been working in each and every one of them every single day for the last...
Senator Farrell, please resume your seat. Order. Senator McKenzie.
Getting in early, Madam President. Direct relevance. He's blathered on in my last question, didn't go anywhere near
McKenzie.
His engagement on this topic, and I'm not going to wait another minute for him to read me his role description.
Senator McKenzie, I would ask you to withdraw that comment, please.
True.
Senator McKenzie,
but true.
Senator McKenzie, it's not okay to argue back with me. I'm asking you to withdraw that part of your question, and then I'll go to the second part of your point of order.
I will withdraw.
Thank you. The minister was being relevant to a part of your question. You did refer to his portfolio, but I will remind the minister of the rest of your question, and I remind all senators, if you put a preamble or a personal comment in your question, the minister is entitled to make reference to it. Minister Farrell, I draw you to the latter part of Senator McKenzie's question.
Thank you, President. Well, can I say each and every day this government works to resolve the problems that we were left by the inaction of the previous government, which you were a part of, Senator McKenzie. Now, we don't publicly discuss discussions that we have with other countries or other organisations. We simply don't do that. And when, of course, you were in government, you didn't do that either. Now, can I say, only a few weeks ago, I was in Ho Chi Minh City with Vietjet, launching the first flight.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answer. Order. Senator McKenzie, second supplementary.
So yeah, absolutely. The no answering, the lack of detail, the cloak of secrecy, the cover-up for certain people continues.
Order.
Minister, isn't the real reason the government refused the Qatar Airways application was because of pressure from a major domestic carrier? Was Minister King again overruled by the real Infrastructure and Transport Minister, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Order on my right. Minister Wong.
I'm happy. Well, I just raised a point of order about the question. I ought have raised it, but with the interjections, I couldn't hear the first supplementary. I think this minister is asking. Sorry, this senator is asking this minister in his primary portfolio capacity. I think asking this minister the reasons for decision of another minister is not in order, because it is not a matter in his portfolio. The senator, my recollection is, did not ask the minister in his representing capacity. So I just make that point, but I don't object to the question. I ought to have raised this in the first supplementary.
Senator Birmingham. And just for clarity, I understood Senator Mackenzie was asking about Senator Farrell's tourism and trade role. If I got that wrong, I apologise. But Senator Birmingham, I'll go to you.
Thanks, President. On the point of order, and indeed I am assuming the question was asked in relation to the trade and tourism portfolio as well. But, President, it would be a very narrow ruling to suggest that a minister with a portfolio such as trade and tourism that clearly is directly impacted by decisions of government in relation to aviation access to Australia cannot be asked questions about those decisions of government, the impacts of those decisions of government, or the rationale for those decisions of government, particularly when they are cabinet decisions ultimately for which all ministers are accountable.
Thank you. I'll just respond to this, Senator Wong. I would agree with your analysis, Senator Birmingham, but Senator Mackenzie did ask about Minister King as well in her question, and that's the point that I believe Senator Wong was raising. But I'll seek the advice of the clerk. Yes, he's nodding his head. So we've allowed the question, and I will direct the minister to Senator Mackenzie's question and to answer it within his trade and tourism portfolio. Minister.
Thank you, President, and I'm very happy to answer the question, as I am of all questions. I'm very happy to answer all of the questions at any time which the opposition would like to ask me, but I've got to say, Senator Mackenzie, it's a bit rich. You, in particular, raising issues of cover-ups, when we still have not had answers about your role in sports frauds.
Minister Farrell, order. Before I come to Senator Mackenzie, I will remind Minister Farrell that you need to direct your answers to me. And Senator Mackenzie?
I asked Senator Farrell to withdraw. He's reflecting on a senator.
Senator Mackenzie, I don't believe there was a reflection there.
Madam President, can I ask you to look at the rulings of previous President Ryan on this matter?
I absolutely will, Senator Mackenzie. Sorry, I may have missed that. There was quite a lot of interjections. I will invite the minister to withdraw. Thank you, Minister. And I'll draw your attention to Senator Mackenzie's question, and let's get on with that. Minister Farrell.
No.
Minister Wong.
Questions be placed on notice.